Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Voice of Real Life. Today, we'll be exploring the archives of 5 murder cases that you may not be familiar with. Please stay back and enjoy. 1. Little Lord Fauntleroy. Little Lord Fauntleroy is the nickname for an unidentified American boy found murdered in Waukesha, Wisconsin, in 1921. On the morning of March 8, 1921, an employee of the O'Laughlin Stone Company found the body of a child floating in the quarry pond. Authorities were notified, and the county coroner examined the boy. He was a white male, estimated to be between 5 and 7 years old, with blonde hair, brown eyes, and a height of about 3 feet 6 inches. The child had been assaulted, with the coroner noting that the cause of death was a blow to the back of his head. The time since death was estimated to be anywhere from 1 week to 6 months. The boy was informally dubbed Little Lord Fauntleroy, a reference to the main character of a well-known children's novel. This nickname stemmed from the expensive clothing he was found wearing, which suggested he might have hailed from a more affluent family. He was dressed in a gray sweater, a light-colored blouse, black stockings, and leather shoes, all of which were indicative of higher-quality garments. However, the clothing alone did not provide a definitive means of identifying him. One potential lead emerged when a local store owner recognized the description of the boy's attire. He recalled having sold similar items at a discount several months prior. Interestingly, this specific type of clothing was not typical for his store, as he had recently acquired the stock from another shop that had gone out of business. This detail raised the possibility that Little Lord Fauntleroy might not have been from an upper-class background after all. He could have simply been wearing discounted clothing, adding a layer of complexity to the mystery of his identity and circumstances. Law enforcement displayed the child's body at a local funeral home in a bid to identify him, hoping that someone from the community might recognize the boy. To encourage tips, a reward of $1,000 was offered for any information leading to his positive identification. Despite these efforts, no one came forward with information, and the case remained shrouded in mystery. In a compassionate gesture, a local woman named Minnie Conrad took the initiative to raise funds for the boy's burial. Her efforts led to a modest funeral, and he was laid to rest at Prairie Home Cemetery in Waukesha. Today, his gravestone still stands as a somber reminder of the tragedy, marking the final resting place of a child whose identity remains unknown. Adding to the intrigue, another employee from the Stone Company later reported an unusual encounter from late January or early February. He recalled a woman in a striking red coat who approached him, tears streaming down her face as she inquired about a missing young boy. The employee noted that the man accompanying her glanced nervously at the pond when she asked her question, as if he feared the worst. After their brief interaction, the couple departed in a Ford vehicle, leaving no further trace. Despite the employee's attempt to assist, they were never heard from again, deepening the mystery surrounding the boy's tragic fate. In the year following the boy's tragic death, a woman was spotted multiple times visiting his grave. She consistently wore a somber black funeral attire, which made her presence even more poignant. Observers noted her quiet demeanor as she knelt by the gravestone, often leaving flowers or small tokens of remembrance. Her repeated visits sparked curiosity and speculation within the community about her connection to the boy. In the 1940s, a theory emerged suggesting that the child might have been Homer LeMay. This theory gained traction when Homer's father came forward, claiming that his son had been adopted by acquaintances and had subsequently died in a car accident in South America. This revelation stirred hope for some that the mystery might finally be solved. However, law enforcement faced significant challenges in verifying the father's claims. They were unable to confirm whether Homer had indeed been adopted or if any American child had died in the particular country mentioned by the father. Further complicating the investigation, the couple who were purportedly responsible for Homer's adoption could not be located. Despite diligent efforts, no records or evidence surfaced to substantiate their existence, leading to further doubts about the credibility of the father's story. As the years passed, the connection between the unidentified boy and Homer LeMay remained speculative, with the truth still elusive, leaving both the community and the authorities with lingering questions about the boy's identity and fate. 2. The murder of Ivy Mitchell. Ernest Austin, born on September 22, 1913, was an Australian criminal known for being the last individual to receive the death penalty in Queensland. On June 8, 1913, 11-year-old Ivy Mitchell was discovered raped and murdered on Cedar Creek Road near Samford. She was the daughter of a farmer and had been playing at the home of her friend, 7-year-old Mary Frisch. As dusk approached, Ivy left to head home with her family living 2 miles away. The rural farming community around Samford was connected by dirt roads. While Frisch walked Ivy to the end of her driveway and said goodbye, Austin began to stalk the two girls. After Ivy continued home alone, she vanished. Her brother James Mitchell Jr. grew concerned when she didn't return by sundown. He took a hurricane lantern and went to the Frisch home, where he learned that Ivy had left hours earlier. Rushing home, he informed his family that she was missing. James Mitchell Sr., their father, then set out with his son to follow the footprints left by Ivy along the dirt road. Soon they noticed larger footprints accompanying her smaller ones. Guided by the lantern light, they followed these tracks to a dense area behind Parker State School, now within Uger, where the grass was trampled as if something had been dragged. There they discovered Ivy's body hidden in the scrub. She had been raped and her throat cut. Nearby, they found hoof marks and a piece of a riding crop, suggesting that the attacker had escaped on horseback. The discovery of the body prompted police officers from Samford to be dispatched by car to start questioning local residents. However, those who had seen Ivy Mitchell reported that she was either alone or with Mary Frisch, and no one had seen her with anyone else. A laborer named Alexander Gordon was near the school at 5:30 p.m. when he trespassed into a garden to pick some oranges. As he left the garden, he saw a local farmhand, Ernest Austin, riding past on his horse. Austin acknowledged Gordon with a good night and urged his horse on with a small tree branch. Although earlier witnesses had reported seeing Austin with a riding crop, Gordon stated that he did not have one when he rode by. Another local laborer, John Loft, worked on a property alongside Austin, and the two shared living quarters. On the night of Ivy's murder, Austin was in their room scraping the sole of his boot with a knife. He asked Loft, "Where are the pincers kept?" To which Loft replied, "In the blacksmith's shop." Austin then used the tool to remove the soles from his boots. On June 10th, 2 days after the murder, Austin was arrested by the police. It was revealed that he had a lengthy criminal history in Victoria, beginning at the age of 11 when he was caught stealing and sent to the neglected children's department. In late 1909, he had been convicted under the name Ernest Johnson for assault with intent to rape, receiving a 3-year prison sentence served at Melbourne Jail and Pentridge Prison. This crime was disturbingly similar to Ivy Mitchell's murder. The victim, a 12-year-old girl, had been dragged into a shed by Austin, who fled when she screamed too loudly. The soles that Austin had removed from his boots were later found and matched to footprints near the body, as were the horseshoes from his horse. Police determined that he had killed Ivy before fleeing to the school's water tank, where he washed the blood from his hands and body, leaving behind additional footprints. Austin was found guilty of the rape and murder of Ivy Mitchell and was executed by hanging in September at Bulgo Road Jail in Dutton Park, Brisbane. He was buried in unconsecrated ground at South Brisbane Cemetery. Austin became the last convict executed at Bulgo Road Jail and the final one in Queensland, as the state abolished the death penalty in 1922, becoming the first in Australia and the first government in the British Empire to do so. It is said that Austin's ghost haunts Bulgo Road Jail, particularly during storms at night. 3. The killing of Linda Agostini. On September 1st, 1934, the charred remains of a woman with a bullet wound to her neck were discovered in a culvert beneath Halong Road in Albury, New South Wales, Australia. After her death, she became known as Pajama Girl. Linda Agostini, born Florence Linda Platt in Forest Hill, a suburb of southeast London, on September 12, 1905, worked as a teenager in a confectionery shop in Surrey. At 19, she moved to New Zealand after reportedly experiencing a broken romance. Platt stayed in New Zealand until 1927, when she relocated to Sydney, Australia. In Sydney, she found work at a cinema and lived in a boarding house on Darlinghurst Road in King's Cross, where she was known to entertain young, attractive men. A heavy drinker and a lively participant in jazz-age festivities, she struggled to adjust to a more stable lifestyle. Her marriage to Italian-born Antonio Agostini, 1903-1969, at a Sydney registry office in 1930 marked the start of an unhappy period, prompting the couple to move to Melbourne to distance her from her Sydney friends. Agostini vanished from her friends and family in late August 1934. About a week before the unidentified pajama girl was discovered in Splitters Creek near Albury on the New South Wales side of the Victoria border. The body was found by a local man named Tom Griffith, who was walking a prize bull along Howlong Road when he spotted it in a culvert beneath the road. He noticed a strong scent of kerosene. Slightly covered by a Hessian grain sack and severely burned, the body would not have been visible to anyone passing by. The victim's head was wrapped in a towel, and she had suffered significant injuries. An X-ray revealed a bullet in her neck. A defining detail of the case was that she was wearing yellow silk pajamas featuring a Chinese dragon motif, considered luxurious, youthful, and bohemian during Depression-era Australia. It quickly became clear that the body belonged to a petite woman in her 20s, but her identity remained unknown. After the initial investigation failed to establish her identity, the body was taken to Sydney, where it was put on public display. Preserved in a formalin bath at the Sydney University Medical School, she remained there until 1942, when she was transferred to police headquarters, where she stayed until 1944. Several names were proposed for the deceased woman, including Anna Philomena Morgan and Linda Agostini. Both were missing, resembled the pajama girl, and were of the appropriate age. However, New South Wales police concluded that neither of the missing women was the pajama girl, leaving her identity unresolved. In 1944, 10 years after the body was discovered, forensic evidence was re-examined, and dental analysis confirmed the victim's identity as Agostini. Tony Agostini had recently returned to Sydney after spending time in internment camps at Orange Hay and Loveday from 1940 to 1944 due to his nationalist sympathies. Police Commissioner William Mackay, who had known Agostini before the war when he worked as a waiter at a restaurant Mackay frequented, interviewed him. Noticing that Agostini appeared anxious, Mackay inquired about his nervousness. It was then that Antonio Agostini confessed to killing his wife. In his statement, he claimed he had accidentally shot and killed her while they were living in Melbourne. Fearing he would be accused of murder, he drove her body across the state border to Albury and disposed of it in the culvert. He poured petrol over the body and set it on fire to eliminate the evidence. Agostini's arrest created a sensation, as it meant the pajama girl had finally been identified. He was charged with murder and extradited to Melbourne for trial. Although he was acquitted of murder, he was found guilty of manslaughter and sentenced to 6 years in prison, of which he served only 3 years and 1 month. He was released in 1948 and deported to Italy, where he passed away in 1969. 4. The hanging of Joseph Burns. Joseph Burns was born in 1806 in Liverpool, England, to Irish immigrant parents who had settled in the vibrant port city. Growing up amidst the bustling shipyards and maritime culture, he developed a keen interest in woodworking and shipbuilding. At around the age of 20, seeking adventure and opportunity, he enlisted in the Royal Navy as a ship's carpenter. In 1840, Burns embarked on a significant journey to New Zealand aboard the ship Buffalo, which was part of a fleet exploring the Pacific. The ship arrived in the picturesque Bay of Islands, known for its stunning landscapes and rich Maori culture. Unfortunately, on July 28th of that year, the Buffalo met a tragic fate when it was wrecked at Mercury Bay, a location characterized by its rugged coastline and tumultuous waters. After the shipwreck, Burns decided to take his discharge, marking a turning point in his life. Embracing the opportunities of his new surroundings, he found work with the government, contributing to various maritime projects that were crucial for the development of the emerging settlements. Eventually, he moved to Auckland, where he began his career with a local boat builder, honing his skills and establishing a reputation as a talented craftsman. His work not only reflected his craftsmanship, but also played a vital role in supporting the growing maritime industry in New Zealand. Burns gained a reputation for heavy drinking, which he claimed was necessary to alleviate the severe headaches resulting from head injuries he had sustained in a fall from a mast. He lived with Margaret Reardon, a married woman who was separated from her husband, in a shack that Burns had constructed in Mechanics Bay. Their relationship produced 2 sons. In 1845, Burns found work in a market garden, but was dismissed after assaulting the foreman. Despite settlers' reluctance to employ him, he eventually secured a position as a farm laborer on the North Shore for James Harp. However, in early 1847, Harp let him go for stealing and butchering livestock. Following his dismissal, Burns was evicted from the farm cottage and built a makeshift home for his family at Shoal Bay. They managed to survive on Burns's casual labor for the chief Patchuon, along with vegetables grown by Margaret Reardon. On October 22, 1847, in a desperate bid for money, Burns murdered Naval Lieutenant Robert Snow, along with his wife and daughter, to steal 12 pounds in naval pay that was kept in their home. To cover his tracks, he mutilated the bodies to make the crime appear as if it were a Maori attack and set the house on fire. Although Maori in the area were initially suspected, the coroner, Dr. John Johnson, concluded at the inquest that the murders were committed by unknown individuals. This incident heightened fears of a potential Maori attack on Auckland. In the aftermath, Margaret Reardon left Burns and took the children to her sister, Sophia Aldwell, in Shortland Crescent. Burns then joined the naval steamer Inflexible, which departed for Australia on November 6, 1847, and returned to Auckland on December 11. On December 28, he visited Margaret to persuade her to marry him, hoping it would prevent her from testifying against him. However, she refused. In a drunken rage, he violently attacked her and then attempted suicide. He was subsequently arrested, and during the Supreme Court criminal sessions on March 1, 1848, he was found guilty of grievous bodily harm. The following day, he was sentenced to transportation for life. Burns grew increasingly anxious that Margaret Reardon would implicate him in the Snow murders. He requested that she visit him with their 2 boys and pressured her to support a false confession in which he claimed that Thomas Duder and William Oliver, his former shipmates from the Buffalo, were responsible for the crime. They were cleared of any wrongdoing after Burns recanted his statement. On June 1st, he was formally charged with murder and accused Margaret Reardon, the key witness for the prosecution, of prompting him to make the false confession. She ultimately admitted to perjury and detailed the actual events. Chief Justice William Martin found Burns guilty of willful murder and sentenced him to hang. On June 17, 1848, after making a full confession that unjustly implicated Margaret, he was escorted from the jail across the harbor to the location of his crime, where he was executed in front of a large crowd of settlers and Maori. He became the first European in the colony to be executed for a capital offense. In September 1848, Margaret Reardon was convicted of perjury and sentenced to 7 years of transportation. 5. The poisoning of Charles Bravo. Charles Bravo, born Charles Delaunay Turner in St. Pancras, London, was baptized in St. Helier, Jersey in 1852. He was the son of Augustus Charles Turner and Mary Turner, but later adopted the surname Bravo from his stepfather, Joseph Bravo. Bravo was educated at Trinity College, Oxford, and the Middle Temple, being called to the bar in 1870. By the time he married Florence Ricardo, the daughter of Robert Campbell, he had already fathered an illegitimate child. His affluent wife, Florence Campbell, had previously been married in 1864 to Alexander Louis Ricardo, the son of MP John Ricardo. She had separated from him due to his infidelities and struggles with violent alcoholism. Florence herself had engaged in an extramarital affair with the much older Dr. James Manby Gully, a prominent society doctor who was also married, which caused her to fall out of favor with her family and society. After Ricardo's death in 1871, Florence married Charles, a respected and rising barrister, on December 7, 1875, ending her affair with Gully. Investigations revealed that Charles exhibited controlling, mean, violent, and bullying behavior towards Florence. Since she was wealthier than Charles and chose to retain control over her own finances, a right newly granted by the Married Women's Property Act of 1870, this created tensions in their marriage. The poisoning of Charles Bravo took place 4 months into his marriage. His death was prolonged and painful, lasting 2 to 3 days, during which he notably did not provide any explanation for his condition to the attending doctors. One theory suggests that Charles Bravo had been slowly poisoning his wife with small, cumulative doses of antimony in the form of tartar emetic, which could account for the chronic illness she experienced shortly after their marriage. While treating himself with laudanum for a toothache before bed, he mistakenly ingested some and then took the tartar emetic, believing it to be a genuine emetic that would induce vomiting. Their housekeeper, Mrs. Cox, reportedly informed the police that Charles had confessed to using the tartar emetic on himself when they were alone, although she later altered her statement, possibly to shift suspicion away from herself and onto Florence. Other investigators have proposed various theories regarding the cause of the poisoning, including suicide, murder by Mrs. Cox, whom Bravo had threatened to dismiss, murder by Florence, or even murder by a disgruntled groom whom Bravo had recently discharged from the Priory. 2 inquests were conducted, and the details were deemed so scandalous that women and children were barred from the room during Florence Bravo's testimony. The intense cross-examination helped to launch the career of lawyer George Henry Lewis. The first inquest resulted in an open verdict, while the second inquest concluded with a verdict of willful murder, although no one was ever arrested or charged. Following the inquest, the household disbanded, and the twice-widowed Florence relocated to Southsea, Hampshire. She died at the age of 33 from alcohol poisoning 2 years later, on Tuesday, September 24th, possibly the 17th, 1878.